Hey everyone, today I'm going to teach you how to construct a birth chart just by looking at someone's hands. So this is part of astropalmistry and we're expanding our series on Valmiki systems here. And the first thing you got to do is have a look at our previous videos that we've done on this series. So where I show you where the zodiac signs are on the hands, and also where I show you how each planet correlates to a different line on the hand. And if you don't have that information, I've linked to those videos in the description section below. So check those out first and then come back here. But before we can really get into how to build a birth chart, let me just explain the concept of degrees and how they show up on a hand. So every phalange on the hand, that represents a different zodiac sign. And each zodiac sign in the night sky, that extends itself over about 30 degrees. So what we do is the top of every phalange, we mark that as 0 degrees. And the bottom of every phalange, we make that 30 degrees. So if we want to measure where a different planet is or how it's influencing a different zodiac sign, we subdivide this area up into like 15 degrees, 7.5 degrees, and then on the other side of that, 22.5 degrees. And so whenever we see a horizontal line or a vertical line in this area, we know that some planet is either sitting on that degree or it's aspecting that degree. In either case, that planet is giving its influence to that particular part of the zodiac. So if we put all this information together, then we can actually start to build a birth chart. So let me give you an example here. So if you look at the second house in this birth chart, you can see Ketu sitting at 27 degrees. Now, North Indian birth charts normally don't look at degrees as an important factor at all, so that's why there's 27 written here. But for our purposes, we are going to look at degrees because it makes reading the hands a little bit more easier. So what we do is we look at the Libra area of this hand, which is the top phalange of the pinky finger. And 27 degrees is very close to the end of Libra, so remember this goes out at 30 degrees. And we should expect to see either vertical or horizontal lines here. And as you can see, there are in fact vertical lines here, and those lines represent the influence of Ketu at 27 degrees. Then we look at the third house for this birth chart, and we can see Saturn at 4 degrees. Now that R over there means retrograde, and we're not going to get into retrograde planets so much right now, but what we can say looking at this birth chart is that at 4 degrees of Scorpio, there should be a horizontal or vertical line here. And if we look on the hand, we can actually see a vertical line over there. Now remember, the vertical lines are auspicious energy, whereas horizontal lines in these areas is inauspicious energy. So the fact that Saturn is retrograde here actually tells us that it's doing something good, quote unquote, for this person. So then we can jump ahead 2 houses and look at Jupiter at 16 degrees in Capricorn. Now that's the top phalange of the middle finger. And Jupiter being at 16 degrees, we should expect either a vertical or horizontal line at around about the middle point of that phalange. And sure enough, we can actually see 2 lines over here. And then moving into the 7th house of Pisces, which is where that 12 is. This one's interesting because we've got 3 houses here at 12 degrees, which is the Sun, and at 24 degrees and 25 degrees, which is Mercury and Venus. So looking at this person's hand, sure enough, we see a horizontal line at 12 degrees where the Sun should be. And we're also seeing 3 lines at the bottom of that phalange where Mercury is at about 24 degrees and Venus at about 25 degrees. Then jumping into Aries, which is the first phalange of the index finger, we can see Mars at 14 degrees and Rahu at 27 degrees. Both of these are horizontal lines, so again we can see that these planets have some negative influence on this person. So then moving into the 9th house, we see the Moon at 7 degrees, and that's in the sign of Taurus. And sure enough, we see a vertical line here, which represents the Moon at 7 degrees. Now there is a little bit of a margin of error with this. The planets won't be at exactly the same degrees as what the birth chart says, but it is going to be close enough that we can work with that to make predictions. Okay, so now let's have a look at another example here. And we'll just go through this one really quickly. What we can see here is on the birth chart, Saturn retrograde at 0 degrees in Scorpio. Jupiter at 23 degrees in Capricorn. Then if we look at Aries, we can see that Venus at 0 degrees and Rahu at 23 degrees in the birth chart. Now the phalange for Aries on this person's hand only shows a line at 23 degrees for Rahu. There's no line for Venus, and that's because you can't have lines that are outside the span of your fingers. So if anything's at the cusp of Aries or even Cancer, Libra or Capricorn, the top phalanges of the fingers, then you won't actually get a line there. It'll be like a blind spot here with astropalmistry. Then if we look at Taurus, we can see on the birth chart that Mercury's at 5 degrees, the Sun at 15 degrees, and Mars at 29 degrees. And we can see those corresponding lines in the correct spaces over here as well. In Virgo, on the birth chart, the Moon is at 26 degrees. The 12th house for this person has Ketu at 23 degrees. And we can see that line over here as well. Now the interesting thing with this birth chart is if you just look at the lines on the hands just by itself without the markers here, you can actually see that it's Leo, the middle phalange of the ring finger, that has the most lines running through it. And if you look at the birth chart, there's actually no planets in Leo there at all. So what's the story here? With planets and with astrology, there's this concept known as aspects. So if a planet is square another planet or another house, it will still give its influence there. So all these planets here in Taurus, the three of them, Mercury, Sun and Mars, they actually aspect Leo. And so although those planets aren't in Leo itself, those three planets will still give an influence to whatever happens in Leo. And similarly, Saturn is also square Leo as well, so that planet has the influence of these four planets. But it gets a little bit more complex there, because if you look at Aries, where Venus and Rahu are, they trine Leo here. So that one house that has 0 planets in it actually has the influence of 6 of the 9 planets here. And that's a really cool thing with astropalmistry, because you can just look at someone's hand and figure out which house is the most important here. And it's not necessarily the one with the most planets, because in this example, it's actually the house with no planets in it that's the most important. So whenever a planet does transit through Leo, it's going to give that person more significant results than if a planet transits anywhere else. And on that note, in the next video we are actually going to talk about transits and how to time and measure them, and also start to make predictions for people using this information. So make sure you hit subscribe, and if you have any questions, then just put them in the comment section below. Thanks a lot, guys.